Uh, Dr. Usman, we've spoken about economy, we've spoken about, of course, the way, as far as economic impact of reforms is concerned, as far as, broad-based taxation, all of that. In the face of all of those challenges that Pakistan has consistently been grappling with, and we felt, over time that things have stabilized to an extent. These floods now, how do you see the picture now? Of course, it seems to be getting muddier, it seems to be getting, perhaps more challenging even as we speak. How are you looking at things?
My worry is more for the coming months.
Okay.
My worry is that the damage that we are experiencing now will translate into economic outcomes more 3 months or 6 months down the road.
Okay.
There are 3 areas that I'm concerned about. The first is inflation, because we've done a very good job at controlling the rate of inflation.
Yeah.
Now, with food commodities being a very significant portion of the basket of the ordinary consumer, because the stock is being depleted, the next harvest is not going to be the same. Of course, 2 harvests down the road, the soil is more fertile, but that's too far out. In the more immediate term, you will see that cost of living issues will arise as foodstuffs will become more expensive. The second is for the employment and wage earning element. So about 50% of our labor force, not GDP, but just labor force is involved in agriculture. And it's about 25% of GDP now, or 30-ish. Now, with that 50% that's involved in labor, if your crop is devastated, you have not as many hands to be able to help. Those who own the farms are different from those who work on the farms, and those who work on the farms will face acute struggles in being able to feed their family. They tend to have larger families also, so more mouths to feed. That sort of labor-related issue comes up. And the third is the reinvestment expenses. So we want to see our farms grow in terms of the capital stock. We want to see them have better machines, better stuff happening. But now a lot of costs are going to be put down just to be able to catch up to where we were prior to the floods. Okay. So we're in this vicious cycle.
So it takes us back, you're saying.
That's correct. That's correct.
To a large extent. Are involved, and that value chain, I think the business value chain he's talking about. Are we insulated enough to be able to do so, in your opinion?
I think that this is the right mindset. Basically, we're talking about public value preservation. And there's many stakeholders in public value preservation. It's not just the government. It's not just the federal government. It also involves civil society. It also involves politicians, the private sector. Everybody has to get involved. And this mindset of not requiring assistance as imdad is very positive, because Pakistan does have the resources to grapple with all of its problems more than sufficiently. There is one other element to this, however, which is that this is not just a national issue, it is a regional crisis. Okay. And of course, climate change is global by nature, but everything that is south of the Himalayas is in jeopardy. You are seeing the videos coming from as far east as Uttarakhand and Madhya Pradesh.
Trans-border, as they say.
It's certainly trans-border, but the person on the other side of the border is not behaving rationally. You are seeing that the spillways are being let go at the wrong time. And the greatest damage of that, aside from obviously the civilian damage in India, is to East Punjab. It is a very bad situation, and I'm willing to say on TV that there is a irreconcilable gap between the Sikhs and the Hindus in Haryana and East Punjab. Like it is that irreconcilable now. Okay. First of all, this Sindoor war had a very strong impact on the Sikhs, galvanizing their desire and aspirations for a Khalistan, but also that they see this bad faith acting by the union government and how it is actually jeopardizing many holy Sikh sites in Pakistan and settlements of Sikhs in India. I mean, the Kartarpur thing, it's very close to the river, and you saw that it was. This is kind of profaning of a holy site from the Sikh perspective. It's only at the second tier of that building, that holy building, that holy site, that they were able to manage and protect things. So the Sikhs are seeing this as a very nasty move by India, and because, as you use the exact term, trans-boundary, Pakistan and India should be working together. But what happened this year? The Indian government held the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance. There's no such thing in that contract, and the World Bank ruled in Pakistan's favor. So if this is the mindset in which regional problems are going to be held, then everyone's going to drown, I'm going to tell you right now.
But we also had the SCO, and you know, one hopes, of course, like you said, we haven't seen that happen, but one hopes that there will be, you know, perhaps more rationality from across the border. Because of course we are looking at China, we are looking at, you know, that the SCO summit and prioritizing that kind of regional cooperation, and you can't have regional cooperation with a partner like India unless it does away with, like you said, these kind of draconian one-sided measures or one-sided decisions that it chooses to take.
Yes, you're right, and I'd like to add one thing in that, which is that the SCO begins with the doctrine of common security as a positive sum game. So your security is my security, which does away with the previous colonial system of my security means your insecurity. Well, India is very much steeped in that I need to make sure you're insecure. And that, so it's not a legitimate member of the SCO because it doesn't share those values. It thinks that making Pakistan a little bit less secure will make it a little bit more secure, and it doesn't work like that. In fact, because I'm mentioning the Sikh element to this, it's making India a lot less secure. Northern India is a lot less secure.
Let me on this from you, because we are, you know, this involvement, what kind of framework do you think can there be, you know, under which the private sector can then, you know, respond? Because she's right, there have to be guidelines, there have to be a formula. Otherwise, there will be these issues which she's mentioned.
It's a very good point that was made about the fact that private sector, when it runs amok, is actually much worse for the environment. I mean, what do you think started this climate crisis to begin with? And the frameworks that they're speaking of is that private sector has specific contributions in targeted areas to achieve precise outcomes. When you have those sorts of frameworks put into place, then you're much likelier to get the outcomes you want, as opposed to just kind of nudging the private sector to do what it wants, because there's two things there. One, they might seek a marketing outcome from it, that look, we're doing so much, which is what's called greenwashing. So we're doing all this for the environment, becomes a marketing slogan rather than actually helping out the people that are in dire straits. And the second thing is they may try to capitalize for private interest rather than public interest. So what was cited was the private housing on a riverbed. I mean, does that make sense to any of us, that you're bringing private housing societies on riverbeds? It doesn't make sense to start with. And the other point there that was very important was that there's been a hijacking of the COP summit. So you build this international platform for everybody to come and share their views, and it's been totally hijacked by big business, particularly big oil. They come and they pay delegates, or they have their interests and lobbies manipulated so that what you get is such a watered down agreement by the end that it's not going to solve the world's problems. So letting the wrong people in the room, or having the right people...
It's going to have a counter effect to what, you know, is... let me go to Asad on this. Asad, there's also corporate social responsibility that she's mentioned is, of course, part of has to be part of private businesses. How much of it, in your opinion, is actually happening? I believe that it is now part of the governments. You know, we saw even in the new budget, there was, you know, there's a lot more seriousness attached to it now. Do you think that it's relatively being practiced more? Do you think there's a seriousness to it? Do you think that it is one of those things that is not a whitewash anymore?
Yeah, like like the new buzzword which is just like coming up is the ESG practices in context of when we talk about CSR. So like many listed companies are definitely looking into it, just like again OGDCL just got their green certified building and things like that. So that in the hospitals, mother care centers. So this is something which could be replicated. There are certain best practices which could be replicated across Pakistan by certain private counterparts. Again, the need of the hour is to get the policy. So here comes the point that when it's the right time to hit. So right now the government is pushing towards like coming up with a comprehensive climate resilience plan within 2 weeks. So that is something, there are so many plans again, but the plans have to be implemented in true letter and spirit. And these things, what is the need of the hour basically?
This climate resilience plan that you're talking about, it is for private businesses.
It is what government is asked the relevant government counterparts to come up with. So this has to be part and parcel of that comprehensive plan. Again, it should not be developed in such a haste that you miss many important components and overlook the real things. So right people for the right job should be there. There are many people when such requirements come up, such so-called experts pop out, give their non-practical sort of advices, and at the end of the day saying you get the old wine in the new bottle, and again the document or plan rests in the shelves and nothing from that is applied on the shop floor level. So again, if anything is being done in haste, so there are sectoral experts, there are international experts, and if this COP is coming up, so we need to see which people are in fact presenting Pakistan to really fight their case. Is this really the victims' representatives, or just like academic representatives, or so those who are hit hard, they can present themselves in a much better way to fight their case over there. And then the point is, like, it's just like seeking climate finance in such a way that you're asking the developed countries in fact that for the problems which they have created. I correlated with an example that if your neighbor kid is playing cricket and he just hits a sixer and cracks your window, and ultimately if you ask the kid to behave gently next time, the owner or his parents come and teach you that why you haven't put on your climate resilient windows and things like that. So that's the big elephant in the room which we're talking about, which is also in the COPs most of the time, and we get deviated very easily.
But where do we go then, Dr. Usman? I think I find everybody is just raising really important points, and I think so also it's really important what he says, and the example also sort of explains it well. But the question is then where do we go? The countries like us, who are third world countries, who are at the mercy of these huge economies, and we also know, by the way, and that there's a shift in prioritizing. For example, of course, under the Trump administration,
yes,
we know where the priorities are, and it's not on climate damage or climate resilience. So where do we go then? So what is the option for us?
There's some good news and some bad news. The bad news is that there are far larger forces operating against us. The fact is that Pakistan as a population is a miracle. It's a miracle because east of us it's desert, and west of us all the way till the Atlantic Ocean is desert, and yet because of this miracle of the Indus River, we have so many people, so much civilization. It's really a miracle, but this miracle is fragile because it depended on a certain trajectory of a certain river coming out of the Himalayas. So we are very fragile. That's the bad news, that there are big forces working against us, and as the temperature is rising, the Indian Ocean is heating up faster and faster. That means the monsoons happen at erratic times and far larger as they hit, plus glacier melt is coming down and we can't all hold it back. That's the bigger forces. The good news is that there are some countries that have incorporated this deeply, and they have the resources and the muscle, so what we feared would be an even worse situation is not as bad. So for example, China is the leader in solar energy and electric vehicles and wind power and everything. Like, if you have a country that has a muscle and is making that impact, then the future might not be as bad as we thought. Now, even if we don't have that kind of muscle, if you have the right people and the right institutions, the right policies, and we're all working towards public value preservation, climate change is a natural corollary of that in terms of mitigation and adaptation. Like, it should be a natural part of that. So we should be doing the things that we would have done to reform our society in the absence of climate change. Just keep doing those, and climate change is a necessary corollary of a sustainable, equitable, and peaceful, harmonious society in Pakistan.
Right. On that note, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Usman Chohan. Thank you for your time. Asad Mahmood, thank you for being with us today. Mariam Shabir, thank you for joining us. Amir Hayat, thank you for being with us today. Of course, I think one of the really important points today when we spoke was about the role that the private sector can play in the kind of damage, in the kind of disaster we are looking at, and whether that can be done in through a business value chain, which is what we spoke about, rather than in an unregulated or in an or purely organic manner. And if that can actually help those farmers, if those measures can actually help those small or large scale farmers that are suffering, and those people that continue to suffer as a result of this disaster that we are watching, if we can focus on that, if we can build on that, and if that can actually translate into tangible gains for those that suffer, and unfortunately it is the lower strata of society that find itself most vulnerable to this kind of climate damage. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspectives.